Good morning all. It's post bag. Well, it's sort of post bag. This is an eBay item I bought from a UK seller. Let's take a look at it. Oh, I don't have a knife to hand. I'll use this blade. So here it is. Oh, it's in another bag, similar to that bag. Finally, we'll get to it. Oh, it's in a third bag, but I think you can probably see what it is at this point. It is, oh, I should have opened it really. Let's do that with the same blunt knife. Yes, that did make a cut. You probably have guessed at this point that this is a buck converter, completely potted in an aluminium can. He's potted the shrimps. I'm very pleased actually to see that it's got two ground wires, because that means I can put an input connector on there and an output connector, and I've kind of standardized on XT90, so I'll probably go for that. Okay, this is in 24 volts, but between 15 and 40. That's ideal for my lithium iron phosphate battery. Out is 12 volts at up to 30 amps. So can it really do 30 amps? And the other question is, that 12 volts, is it high 12 volts? Is it engine running 12 volts? Because on a lot of these power stations, the 12 volts has been like 13 and a half or something like that. So we will check it out and see what it does. So I've just come out to the shed to take a look at this buck converter. It's the one, the Rui Deng with the display. And I will be replacing it with this eBay buck converter, mainly because this one has a rating of 15 amps, does have a nice display, I'll miss that. And this one has a rating of 30 amps, and that means I can probably run this ant miner on all three of its hashing boards. I think that takes about 300 watts. No, it's about 270 watts at 12 volts. Yeah, so that's not 30 amps. So this should be fine to run this miner pretty much full on. But I used XT90s on here, and really the main reason was not the current handling, it was the pitch between the two pins, which just kind of matched the distance between the two terminal blocks. And actually I think they spaced them because you can end up with the square washer there getting quite close, so they spaced them out simply so that the square washers wouldn't touch in the middle. That's my theory anyway. But yeah, XT90s. So what I want to do now is put a couple of XT90s, one male, one female, on the end of these four wires, bring this out and see if it works in place of that thing. It should do. See if it gets nice and warm actually. This would make a really nice hand warmer. So a couple of these XT60s, a male and a female. The male, of course, no, the female will go on the output. Yes, that's the female, but it's the connector you usually get on LiPos. So that's going to be the, yes, and you want the recessed metalwork for something which has got a constant voltage on it. And the exposed metalwork can be on the input side, where shorting it wouldn't be a problem. So it's going to be like that. Now I'm not going to film the soldering because I've done plenty of that in recent days, and I'm sure you're quite bored with it. So I'll just get on with that and come back when it's done. So I've cut the wires short. These are very recessed in these males. That's positive. Yeah, that goes in a long way, so I've done a longer strip back on that, and these are not recessed at all. That caught me out the other day. The other thing you can do with these, and it's very, very convenient. Oh, I can't find my pliers. Is that you can rotate these before you solder them to a more convenient position. I quite like them sitting as two sort of cups like that. So I'll put that on some blue tack and get soldering. Right, that's done. Think it's the right way around. Yes, that's the input, that's the output. I'll take it out to the shed, measure the output voltage. That's the first thing, just feeling how warm they are. That one's quite warm still. The first thing that's of interest to me, is that squidgy? No, that's solid. Yeah, it doesn't really take a nail indentation. Yeah, measure the output voltage and see whether it's going to be good for the mining. Right, these batteries are fully charged, although I top balanced them by charging with the T8 charger at various different current levels, all the way down to 0.1 amps, 100 milliamps. And so they were absolutely top balanced, but they sink back, and I think that these cells have different springiness. And this concept of springiness, I'm going to have to explain more fully in another video, but they just all sort of settle back to different positions. So they're completely out of balance again. Doesn't look like it from here because they're probably all in their mid-range voltages. They've been sat there for a day doing nothing. Right, let's connect to this up, and I'm going to put a curl in it. I'm expecting a spark because there will be input capacitors in there. So let's see if we get a spark. Yep, a little bit of a clunk. And now I want to measure the output voltage of this. So DC volts on my meter, and nothing related to 10 amps. Connected on. Ah, good, it's just a little bit... Oh, why is it negative? Oh, because I've put the red one on common. Oh, never mind. But it's a little bit above 12 volts, which is fine. Actually, I was concerned that this would be a sort of, I don't know, radio hams version of 12 volts, where they're looking more for 13.8. But that's good, it is 12.1. That's perfect for my ant miner. I shall connect my ant miner and start mining away what's in here. I think initially I might do this with 2 hashing cards, so that we're looking at about, I think it was 13 amps on the output, and that's going to be about 6 or 7 on the input. But I don't have any ammeters here. I ought to make an ammeter XT90 male to female, which can go through my meter, shouldn't I? Yeah, I'm just thinking actually, what the heck, why not go for the 3 hashing boards? That'll be 270 watts at the miner, I think. These are 250 watt hours, approximately 10 amp hours. It's going to mean about 10 amps on this side, possibly a little more. I've got a 30 amp fuse. The BMS can do 20 amps. That should be all right. Yeah, I'm going to put all 3 hashing boards on, see what happens. Right, I've had to put this here because the camera battery was a bit of a dud, and it only runs for a short time without being plugged in. It's now plugged in, so ignore that. That's just powering the camera. Everything seems fine. This is mildly warm, not excessively warm. 270 or 80 watts coming through there is my guess. That's what I know the Antminer takes with all 3 hashing cards. The battery voltages are being pulled against these springs, this springiness. They're being pulled down, but it's still holding 3.06 volts on cell 2. Yes, it's interesting, this springiness. It's as though a spring is being pushed in, but it's managing to hold it, and at some point it'll collapse and go ugh, and give up, and then that'll plunge down really fast, and the BMS will drop out. The BMS was stone cold. It's now mild. No, it's not really warm. It's just not quite as cold as it was. This is the thing that's getting warm. That's 25 degrees, not even 30, I don't think. It might be 30. But it's, yeah, that's quite nice to warm my hand. I'm imagining that'll get a lot warmer. Now, what's interesting about these are commodity items. I mean, they're always available on eBay. This was £20, 19.99. I'll put a link in the description for this. And I can independently power hashing boards with multiples of these. So there's no point trying to find a buck converter which does, I don't know, 80 amps on its output or something mad. 30 amps is more than enough. I'll take the camera out of its cradle. So ultimately I want to try and drive one of these machines, the L3s, because they're much more productive financially, lucrative you might say. But you can see there's a lot of 12 volts needed on this. I think these run at 800 watts if you run them flat out. But I was thinking I could use one of these buck converters on each of these 4 hashing boards, so that there's no danger of overloading the buck converters, and I can buy these off the shelf cheap items and still run a really high power. This is 800 watts at 12 volts. I can't work out in my head what that is in amps, but it's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot of amps. Yes, this is about 300 watts, isn't it? So 4 of these would work on one of these quite nicely, and it doesn't matter that the hashing boards are each driven by an independent one of these. So that's the plan. This is all working quite well actually. 3.06 volts on the lowest cell. As I say, I am expecting about half an hour from these batteries. They're not getting warm, are they? No, they're not bothered about this amount of power. And the nice thing about running the Ant miner with all 3 of its hashing boards running is that it actually throws out a significant amount of heat. I mean, that's a 300 watt or 280 watt heater. That's actually producing a nice bit of warmth around the back there. So that's good. So yeah, I'm very pleased with this thing. I think that's going to do the job perfectly well. And I just rack these up, multiples of these when I build my bigger systems. Bigger batteries, and I have bought some new lithium iron phosphate batteries. Yes, I'll go into that in more detail in another video. BMSs, although I'm not expecting them to actually do very much, because the idea with this is solar charges the batteries until they're nearly full. Some sort of measuring device turns on this to turn on the load. That's just gone up in fan speed. It's obviously warming up in there. And then that mines until the batteries are nearly empty, but not enough to turn this off. And then the relay thing drops out, and solar is connected to these permanently, and they charge back up. That's how it's going to work. And it is working. Right, I'd say this is now, it's getting a bit warmer. This is now up to about 40 degrees would be my guess, something like that, 30, upper 30s. It's not hot, I mean I can leave my hand on it. It's very nice to leave my hand on it. It's pleasantly warm. Still 306 on that cell, so huge amount of current, well 10 amps being pulled from these, and they just hold up until of course they don't, and then they'll fall off a cliff. But it's interesting how flat this centre section of their operation is. Just very little movement. You certainly can't estimate state of charge from voltage on lithium iron phosphate. So still 3.06 volts on the lowest cell, and I'll just come around here for a minute. Oh, I'm at the limit of my cable. But you can see on the mining, if you can see that, it's done 1 penny so far, so I'm expecting 3, it's not a penny, it's a US cent, expecting about threepence before the batteries, 3 US cents that is, before the batteries completely shut off. And this buck converter, that's no more than 40 degrees I would say. It's about the temperature of a human being. 38 degrees as a human being, something like that. Yeah, it's just pleasantly warm. But no movement on that cell voltage. It's extraordinary. It's almost as though they're everlasting batteries. Just a tiny sign of movement on cell 2. That's down to 3.05 now. So I'll keep an eye on that to see when it starts to fall precipitously. But just to compare the mining rates of these miners, that's the one that's running on the lithium ion batteries, and that's done 1 cent. But if I go to the other miners which are on, and they are the ones that are just running off the mains currently, they're the script miners. Oh, I pressed it and then I pressed it again. 2 fingers to bring it down. I mean, together they've earned 38 cents it's just a totally different ballpark. Yeah, they're pulling more power than this is, but they're just far more lucrative, those machines. So they're the ones I want to use ultimately, but they pull more power, I'll need a bigger system. 3.04 now on that cell 2. I've noticed the BMS is mildly warm, 25 degrees, something like that, pleasantly warm, and even the cells are not freezing cold anymore. It's hard to tell their temperature, but they're like 15-20 degrees possibly. This buck converter though is, it's gone up a bit, maybe 45 degrees, possibly not even that. Very nicely warm actually. Wouldn't mind several of those on my desk. Put my hands on them, keep myself warm. 303. That's starting its turn downwards, would be my guess. Okay, update, 2.99 volts on cell 2. BMS is pleasantly warm. Cells are not freezing cold. Buck converter is now warm, hotter than a human, 45 degrees I'd say, but not worryingly so. Everything seems to be hanging in there. Oh, and 2 cents of earnings so far. That could be as much as, on the other machine, that could be as much as 5 or 6 cents. They're that different. 2.98 there now. Yeah, I was just thinking it's nice to have a system that actually works. You know, cells that can handle 10 amps, 1C. A BMS that can actually handle 10 amps, no problem. This buck converter, which probably has getting on for 20 amps on the output of it, works. Everything works. That's not the case when you buy 99-cent bits of tut from China via eBay. I'm not criticising either eBay or China, but if you buy something for 99 cents, well, you get what you pay for. 2.94 on here now. 2.93. That is definitely starting its decline. I'll do it this way around. Decline down, where it accelerates downwards, and then the BMS will go, oh, I don't like that low voltage. What was it? Was it about 2.2 volts or something like that? It went down to eventually? Something like that, wasn't it? Right, I'll turn the light on because for some bizarre reason I was filming with no lights on. This is dropping now quick enough to see it. 2.75, 2.74, 2.73, and that will accelerate. So we'll watch that go all the way down to, I think it was 2.2 or something like that. The BMS will drop out. There'll be a moment of off, and then as these climb back up, the BMS, which I don't think it did come back on, did it? I think it realised the switch back on threshold must be set high enough that it doesn't just switch back on because of cell voltage recovery. So there probably isn't an immediate risk of this all firing back up again. Doesn't really matter because the ant miner over there does a minute or so of boot up before it turns on the high power hashing boards. But I will unplug this because of course the next phase is to hook the solar panel through the ideal diode back up to the cells and charge them back up again. It's all a bit manual at the moment, but ultimately this will be fully automated because I'm not sure whether I mentioned this, but my intention is to have these systems at remote sites where there's nobody there managing them. How well that will go remains to be seen. Much easier to have one here where I can come and watch it and react if something horrible goes wrong. Fans have slowed down, I think on both miners simultaneously. That's nothing to do with power. How warm's that? Yeah, just nice. Nicely warm. Now of course at these higher currents we're losing more energy or power as heat, but I am hoping that I'll do 3 cents. Crypto market's fairly buoyant at the moment. It's gone up, it's showing 2 cents, but whether we'll get to 3 before this cell drops right out. 2.44 now. It'd be nice to get 3 cents, which could translate to, I don't know, 10 or 12 cents on the more profitable machines. And that way you can sort of calculate approximate daily earnings if you had a battery bank big enough to store a day's worth of solar energy. 2.38 on there now, and falling fairly quickly. All the other cells, well, these bottom 6 are all still over 3 volts. So I think we've definitely got a lower capacity cell, because as I say, I have balanced this. Now, of course, the currents at the input end are going to be going up now because the voltage is falling. These cells, oh yeah, cell 1 actually, top one on the left hand side, is quite warm. Cell 2 is also quite warm. 2.26 volts. This thing, BMS, which you can't quite see, no, I can't bring it into shot, is not alarmingly warm, but at 2.2 volts, that should cut out pretty soon. 2.21, or did it go down to 2.18? Was it something like that? 2.20. Yes, it might have been 2.18, 2.19, 2.18, and it's shut down. And the cell voltages are recovering. Right, well, that's the end of the video. I am going to pull this plug out because I don't want it to fire back up again. I don't think it will, but I'll take that out to make sure it doesn't. And that is a full discharge through the new buck converter. I'm very happy with that. I'll buy some more of these. Yes. Oh, just a final update on the coin value earned. And it is, well, you can see this earnings is 2 cents. This line up here, if I can get rid of that. This line up, no, this one up here. Well, the one above there anyway is 5 cents. I can show you that by going to there. There, 5 cents. And you can see that the blue bar is about halfway up. So probably earned about 2.5 cents. Something like that. Cheerio!